Hey there, Tom Romeo from PCS, here to show you now that we've created our virtual machine, how to install Traverse and SQL Server Express. So here it goes. I'm going to run the setup program as an administrator, though you don't need to because it's going to ask for elevated privileges. I just like to do that to show it. And you're going to see it's going to load. And once it loads, it's going to run a PowerShell script. And the PowerShell script is going to install all of the roles and features on this server that are necessary to run Traverse. Once the PowerShell script starts, I'm going to pause the video. Now you'll notice also that my server says 9:50 p.m. It's really 5:50 p.m. I'm in Eastern time and our server is in UTC time. So that's kind of important. Because what we're going to do is pause and then start and then pause and then start and then pause and then start. But we're always going to make mention of the time so you see how much actual time elapsed. So here we go. I'm about to pause. So it's been 5 minutes and you see how it's still running the script. I just wanted to unpause briefly to show that it is actually installing all of this Windows features through PowerShell. And now I'm going to repause and wait until the PowerShell is done. But you know, while that installation is occurring, while we're running all this PowerShell, I do want to show you how we set up the disks on this computer because it's different than our previous video. So here's what we did. You know, the C drive comes natural on an Azure VM. We created an F disk that's got 64 gigabytes, a G disk with 15 gigabytes, and an H disk with 31 gigabytes. Now, 32. So, and this is 16, by the way. Now, the reason why we did that is the F disk is going to be the largest and fastest. So we're going to install all of our databases on the largest and fastest disk. Our software is going to go on the H disk. And then the transaction logs, which are generally pretty small anyhow, will go on the G disk. So SQL Server is going to utilize the G and F, and we're going to put all of our software on H. That makes sense? Okay, so let's see how our PowerShell is working. Oh, and the reason why we did that was because, let's flip pages for a second. If you look at the pricing calculator for Azure. So we used a B2MS, which is $66 a month, okay? And here a 16 gigabyte disk is only $2.40 a month. A 32 is $5.28, and a 64 is $10.21. So we used $10 and $5 and $3. So that's $18. So 66 plus 18, it keeps us under $100 a month. And that's critical if we're going to make this a multi-tenant application. Now also, it's critical because this is going to be a demo server that's multi-tenant, and we're going to leave it up all the time, and we don't want to waste company money. Let's go back to the server. Excellent. Okay, so the PowerShell finished. And you see, and it's 9:59. So that means the PowerShell on this particular VM ran in less than 10 minutes. And now it's extracting everything. And then after this extraction piece is done, it's going to launch the actual install. And where did we say we're going to put it? We're going to put it on the H disk. So all of Traverse will be on the H disk, and then the databases will be on G and F. I'm going to pause, or maybe not. It looks like it might be done. Yeah, I'm going to pause it. Okay, so 10:01, everything's unpacked, and it's about to launch the first stage of the installer. And we're going to put it on H. Excellent. Okay. H. I'm going to create a desktop shortcut. Installing this part goes very quickly, and then it takes us to the next installation / config portion. So this is kind of just dumping out the payload. And after the payload is in place, we're going to do the actual install. Okay, so we're going to accept that EULA again. Notice how it says H. And what we're going to do is install SQL Express. See how it puts all the default information in for us? And we're going to say what? Put it on F. So let's change this C to F. And then we're going to put all the data files on F and all the transaction logs on G. So let's click Install SQL Express and wait for it to do its thing. Now, you need to choose Custom, and then we have an actual custom template. It's okay to leave that media location there because after we're done, we're going to delete it. So we have an install template that's packaged with the installer. So it's going to unpackage the SQL Express. It's probably going to download something else from the Microsoft site. And then after all that's done, we're going to go through answering prompts for SQL Express, but they're all going to be filled out for you, and you're going to see that shortly. So let's say I pause. Well, I'm going to pause in about a minute. Let's see. I want to show you what happens right after this. Yeah. Okay, so it's downloading the install package. Let's pause for right now, and then we'll pick it up. Okay, so that download completed, but we're not done installing SQL Express yet. You see how it popped up a window? Just leave it. Just leave it alone. And it's going to then present us with some questions. So here we go. Now we can answer questions. So it is SQL Express. It's the free edition. I did click Next. I thought I clicked Next. Let's try it again. Okay. We accept the license terms. Okay, it's okay to let Microsoft check for updates. That's cool, or you could turn that off. It's up to you. Okay, and now it's going to give us a little bit of feedback. Now, we don't care about the domain controller. We don't care about the firewall, and I'm going to explain why. The firewall only pertains to if you're using SQL Server on a different server and you need to open up a port on that server for us to get back and forth to it. But since we're going to have Traverse and SQL Server on the same server, it's all local traffic. Now this is important. You notice how we're just installing the engine. We don't need replication like a lot of products do. We don't need it. We don't need any of this machine learning. We are going to install the client connectivity tools and everything else. And you notice how it says C here, but remember what we said. We're putting everything that's software related on H. So let's do that. H. 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 Okay. And we're going to also decide where the backups are going to go. I think the backups will, well, maybe we'll let the backups go to C. Okay, so we have a default named instance as Traverse SQL because this SQL Server is for Traverse. And notice we're running the SQL Server database engine as the local system account. The browser is disabled, but we can enable it if we have to, but we don't need to because everything's on the same server. We're not going to mess with the collation, okay? But you know, there's SQL collation and there are also Windows collations. And SQL Server is deprecating SQL collations. So we could, if we want to, customize this to a Windows collation, but not for this demo. Okay, now we did pick a password. That's a complicated password. Also notice the NT authority, the local service administrators, and the person that I'm currently logged in as are all going to be sysadmin. The data directories are data. We're going to put the log on G, right? We said that, right? Let's go back. So data on F, log, the transaction log on G, and all of our software on H. Okay, so data on F, transaction log on G, and you know what? We could, let's leave it on H, that's fine. Okay, tempdb is also on H, that's fine. User instances, and we have file stream turned on. Let's go back to tempdb. So by leaving tempdb on a separate drive, that's going to take pressure off of SQL Server if you have an expensive query, which typically we don't have that in Traverse anyhow. Okay, so we're ready to install, and the custom config file is on the C drive. So while this is installing, I'm going to pause the video again. We're at 12 minutes of video, even though, 19 minutes have passed. So let's pause and wait for this piece to finish. Okay, so it's at 10:13, and you see that SQL Server has been installed. So here we go. I'm going to close this. Okay, and my test connection button should become active shortly. Right? I want to make sure that SQL Server has started. So now, if I click Test Connection, there it is. And look what we did, right? G has the transaction log. F has the database. We're all set. So now I'm going to continue with the Traverse installation. Right? F and G, we're good. Continue. Click Install. And now the next part that's going to take a while is installing the Crystal Reports runtime. That typically takes a little bit of time, first time. If you were to install a Traverse update, it doesn't do that piece again. So SQL Server is already installed. Crystal Reports are already installed. So if you were to run an update, let's say you get an update 6 months later, you run it right over the existing Traverse, and it does all this for you, but it doesn't have to install SQL Express again. It doesn't have to install Crystal Reports, so it runs much, much faster. But I'm going to pause again, and then when we're done past this piece, we're going to then configure Traverse with the initial setup. Okay, so the Crystal Reports is actually done. We're creating the virtual directory for Traverse right now in IIS. And shortly after that, we're going to start all the services, and it's going to be done. So there are 3 services, right? Well, there are 4 services, plus there's a web service and a REST web service. The REST web service is what we use to connect the mobile app. So we've got 2 mobile apps. We've got Traverse Mobile, and then we've got Traverse Kiosk, and we're going to get into all of that. Okay, but it's just about done. Great. Now, while all this was going on, we also created the Traverse certificate. And I'm going to show you that quickly, but we're not going to activate it just yet. Okay, so I'm going to go into Internet Information Services. and this is Windows Server 2019. Okay, you see our application pools, Traverse REST Web Service, and the Web Service are all running under local system, though we could change that. Okay, and here in Traverse, the application settings, I'm going to change this value right here to be actually I'm not going to change it to be anything just yet. I am going to go to the default website, edit the bindings, and add HTTPS Traverse. Okay. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I can right from here just browse to it. I didn't make it SSL just yet. If this doesn't work, I'm going to change the force URL to be something different. Did it open my browser? It did. Okay. So when this happens, it's because we don't have the correct path set up. So let's fix that. So we could do this a couple of different ways. I think the easiest thing to do is to just do the full-blown SSL thing right now. So to do that, I'm going to set this up as https://traverse.pcstraverse.com. I don't think I need to put the /traverse in there. Let's try it. Okay. And then I'm going to do this. Require, apply. All right, let's do it that way. So now, if I come here and open up a new tab and say, okay, so now I know what I need to do. You ready? I need to change that value to that. Perfect. Okay, so now the first thing we do is log in. There's no password yet. I'm going to create a password. Okay. And then we need to register the product. And then we're going to archive after 1 year, and we're going to purge after 3 years. Save it. And now I'm going to click license, and it's going to give me a temporary license. Right? So now what I'm going to do on my other server is make that permanent. I'm going to pause. Okay, so I've set it permanent on so I'm going to unlicense and now relicense, and now I'm going to have a permanent license. Perfect. Okay, so that's that. After we do this piece, we can then add new users, do whatever we need to do. But for right now, you see Traverse has been installed. Let's go back to the VM. So Traverse has been installed and we're using SSL. Did you notice that we've got the little lock here? That's because we trusted that certificate. Okay, so let's go back to that VM. And I think that's all we're going to do for this video. Thanks for watching, and remember, you can download all of our software from our website.